Hello and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the studios of the American Guns and Glory Network here in Las Vegas. This show is about guns, related political issues, and self-defense issues. Fired Up with Bob Irwin is on YouTube, at least at the moment. We'll talk about that later. And with a new show coming up every Thursday at 5 p.m., give or take. This show is coming live to you at this moment. Once they're online, they stay up there forever, so if you miss something, you can go back and see what I said 3 years ago that turned out to be totally wrong. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. It's 8 to 10 stations that broadcast the same show simultaneously throughout Nevada as I said, at noon on Saturdays. You can find the stations in the hamlet that you live in at www.KELY1230.com. That's their main station. And everything else is on an automatic feed to all the other stations. Same show at the same time on all the stations. If you have a question or comment, you can send an email to me at bob@firedupmail.com. You will find that somewhere, hopefully, on the crawl on the bottom of the screen, right down here. And or give me a call on my office phone, which is area code 702-257-1060. We do respond to all calls if you leave us contact information to get back to you and answer your question or respond to your comment. If you have a question for one of my guests, you can do that. Also leave the information at the same Fired Up Mail address or on the phone, my home recorder, my office recorder, and it will get back to them. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, rarely covered by the mainstream media, so we always try to present a few for our listeners' education. Some are good shooting, some are questionable, some are just wrong, but they all have educational value for people who carry a concealed weapon or have a gun at home, where you can put yourself in the position of this individual who was in it and look at what he did and what you could do that could make it maybe better or keep you out of a lawsuit or something if you handle it a little differently. We are a nationwide show. Generally, with my guests, we use Nevada law as our standard for whether the shooting is legally right or wrong. We don't get into that too far. We're just basically trying to keep you out of jail and deflect civil lawsuits so you have a reasonable defense if you're sued over a shooting. So if you are actually involved in a shooting incident, don't follow the advice on this show on the air. Contact an attorney in your jurisdiction who can advise you on what the laws are there. Obviously, the rules for shooting at somebody in Wyoming are different from the rules for shooting at somebody in New York City. So local law always prevails. My guest today is firearms instructor Lenny Davis, one of my regular guys here who's been a firearms instructor for about 1 million years and a federal agent and this, that, and the other thing. I want you to do a little bit of background, if you would. It's been 3 weeks, I think, since you've been on.
I've been on, yeah.
Wow.
I'm, as Bob said, I'm a retired special agent with Department of Homeland Security. I've spent about 10 years as a subject matter expert for the Department of State in their Global Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program. And now I run a security and firearms training firm here in Las Vegas.
That's it?
Well,
You sent me an email the other day that
I did.
Textrada, who you were working for, is now changed to.
Yeah, I basically have bought out my former employers, and now I own and run SRT Special Services. We're Nevada licensed security, private investigations, and training firm here in Las Vegas.
And doing
we
guard training.
We are doing everything from civilian firearms training to law enforcement training. I'm going to be, we obviously will do security firearms training, and we've just got the company off the ground, and we're moving forward.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So now you're your own boss.
I am my own CEO, if you will.
Trust me, I've done this
Yes,
years ago. You're
yes.
your own CEO and janitor.
Janitor, everything. I'm
and night
the guy.
watchman.
I actually have a wonderful administrative assistant that takes care of everything, keeps the wheels on it all. So we're good.
This first story comes from the Denver Post and CBS News. It's on the 16th of March in Aurora, Colorado. Police say the owner of a grocery store was shot Friday during a robbery by a man who was later shot by a Good Samaritan who came to the store owner's aid. Responding to a 911 call just after 2 in the afternoon, Aurora police arrived at the Village East grocery store. It's in the 1100 block of South Peoria Street, if you happen to be familiar with Aurora, Colorado. They found a woman believed to be the grocery store owner injured with a gunshot wound in the parking lot. She was taken to a hospital where she is listed in serious but stable condition as of these reports. Another person whom the police referred to as a Good Samaritan reportedly confronted the robber outside the grocery store and allegedly shot the robber, who then fled the area. Police found a wounded male in the area near South Joliet Street and East Garden Drive, which is nearby the market, a few blocks, I believe. Believing him to be the man who shot the grocery store owner, they took him into custody. Their suspect was then transported to a local hospital to be treated for his injuries. The robbery and shooting are still being investigated. Police are asking for help. If you happen to be from Aurora and have information on this, you can drop me a line on my home phone there, or my website, and I will forward you. The guy's name is Sergeant Thomas Graham, who is the investigator who's handling the case for the Aurora PD. Pretty straightforward case. Another instance of an armed citizen obviously saving lives. The guy did the right thing. That being said, we need to discuss the possible difficulties of jumping into a third-party defense.
Well, you know, for years as a federal agent, I did a lot of undercover work, and there were times, although we always tried not to be the guy who, you know, even though you were in the middle of the bust, we were not the guy to pull out the gun and say you're under arrest, because we're usually obviously in plain clothes and that kind of thing. And there's been cases where officers have done that, off-duty officers have done that, and confronted somebody with an arm, you know, with firearm, and then a patrol officer would show up and see two guys with guns, and there's been some, unfortunately, a couple of tragic shootings of the, you know, mistaken identity, not really the fault of the police officer that arrived. So you got to be careful, because if you understand this, you're a civilian, you suddenly pull out a gun and shoot a guy. What happened before that, the police officer is not necessarily going to get to see. So you better be very, very careful when this happens. I'm not saying don't do it, but be aware that post-shooting, there's a lot of things that you need to do when the police are arriving.
The first of which is to set the gun on the ground, and if the officer says drop it, if it's your new combat commander fully engraved, drop it. Drop it slowly. But, you know, this guy's truly a hero for jumping into this. Apparently he saw the robbery, so he knew who was the good guy and bad guy, and he's absolutely a hero. But that's the caution. The robber is disabled or runs away. As the police come sliding in, they have no idea who the good guy is and the bad guy is. You know who the good guy is, so you assume that he knows that too. And I'm talking, you're in brain warp. You know, this is the most exciting or scary thing you've ever done in your life, in all likelihood. One way around this that I recommend to everybody who will listen, if it's possible, you have time and distance and the capability to give a warning, to yell at the robber or the guy you think is the robber or the guy you think is the bad guy, you know, drop the gun, you know, get away, drop the gun, stand where you are, put your hands in the air, whatever is appropriate for the situation that you're in, just in case the guy goes, well, yeah, but I'm, Officer Smith,
What?
and if you give a warning and it's a police officer there, they're going to tell you that. And it also gives the robber a chance to go, okay, I give up, I quit.
Well, a very, it's an older case, but obviously it's still a teachable moment to this day. Was the 1986 FBI shootout with the two bank robbers.
Yeah.
They were all in plain clothes, and the patrol officers, they were engaged in a massive gun battle where two of the FBI agents were killed, and the two bad guys.
This is the case in Miami. You're talking
Yes,
about,
the Miami bank robbery shootout with the FBI, which changed a lot of federal agent, well, a lot of law enforcement shootings. But the responding police department showed up, and they see two groups of guys in plain clothes, exchanging gun battle. Well, you got to remember, this was 1986 in Miami. This was not an unusual thing, so they were not going to run in there and go, okay, who's the bad guy? It could have been two cartel groups fighting it out. So
And
those
most likely it would be.
and
So,
yeah, usually in Miami at that time it would have been for sure.
Not like today.
No, not
No,
today.
Miami, they don't do that anymore. But the point is, if you run into this, if you're sure you know who the bad guy is, and you want to risk your life saving a third party, that's a great thing to do. You're a hero. Once in a while, if you engage in a gunfight, the good guy loses. First off, if you get in a gunfight, you could lose. Secondly, you've got third-party police responding, or maybe another citizen who's also trying to help, and he thinks you're the bad guy. Lots can go wrong. Try and give warnings. Try and use cover if you can, so when they shoot at you, you don't get hit. Lots of things there. We're going to take a break for just a moment here for a word from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back with a story out of Utah very recently. Don't go away. Hi. Now you can get a copy of my recently updated book, The Reality of Armed Self-Defense. This is based on my 40 years experience in evaluating and defending lethal force cases. Learn the rules of using deadly force before you have to guess in the middle of a hostile situation. For Fired Up Special, you can get this book for only $10. If you live outside the first 48, please add appropriate postage. Mail orders can be sent to Bob Irwin, P.O. Box 97413, Las Vegas, Nevada 89193. Thanks for ordering one. And we are back. This is from ABC News TV4 in West Valley, Utah. They have a website which contains the same thing at News 4 Utah, numeral 4, news, numeral 4 Utah.com. On the 23rd of March, an attacker was shot after he allegedly stabbed another man at a gas station Friday night in West Valley City. Lieutenant Jeff Conger of the city police, this would be West Valley Police, said a man was standing at the red box at a gas station, the 3500 South, 4400 West, at around 11 p.m. when another male walked by him and went inside in order to purchase beer. The man who went in to buy the beer appeared to be in a hurry, according to the cashier, the lieutenant said. That customer then left the store, comes out, and stands directly behind the guy, another customer who's at one of the red box video rental things, picking out a video. And for some unknown reason, the second customer, while he's trying to buy a video, the first customer pulled out a knife and stabbed the guy in the neck. We really don't expect that when we're you're trying to rent a red box video. After the second customer was stabbed, that second customer ran to his car, grabbed a gun, and shot the attacker multiple times. The attacker, who had been struck by one of the bullets, fled the area on foot. When police arrived, they searched the area with canine officers and located the suspect nearby. I looked it up, it's like 2 blocks away. Both the victim and the suspect were sent to the area hospitals with significant wounds, and both now have been released, fortunately. The Lieutenant Conger said they booked the 21-year-old stabber into the Salt Lake County Jail for a felony aggravated assault, possession of a dangerous weapon by a restricted person. We got the language there. He's prohibited from having weapons, probably including knives if you're a felon. I don't know if you're allowed to have a knife if you're a felon. I guess it depends where you are. But
Yeah.
Congress said the stabbing victim most likely will not face any charges. That's nice. The incident does not appear to be gang-related, but as of this story, it's currently still under investigation. If you have any information, get a hold of us or the West Valley City Police Department in West Valley, Utah. Wow. You don't have to go looking for trouble, and trouble just finds you.
This is one of those American Express moments. Don't leave home without it. That's one of the reasons why, to this day, unless I'm going somewhere where I know I can't carry a concealed weapon, I carry a firearm. Because you just don't know when this is going to happen in front of you.
Yeah, this guy is got a gun, but it's in his car. Well, it's better to have it in the car than not at all.
Than not at all.
Considering if he hadn't had the gun in his car, this guy would be chasing him through the parking lot, probably stabbing him again. He's lucky that he was somewhere where he could get it. And I've seen that a lot. I mean, Utah, you can get a concealed carry permit pretty easily in Utah. So I can't imagine if he's a straight guy that he couldn't get a concealed carry permit. He didn't need to leave the gun in his car, but some of us do that. If you're 30 seconds away from having a gun, it's way better than being an hour away from having a gun. He's lucky he could get to his car. As Lenny said, everybody watching this program realizes that guns are usable for self-defense and used for self-defense way more often than they're used for criminal purposes. But you never get to pick the time. You never get to pick the place. The bad guy gets to pick the place. I don't know how many people I've run into that say, I only carry my gun, if I'm going someplace that I expect to be dangerous. The answer to that statement, which is dumb, in my opinion, is if it's dangerous to go there, don't go. And carry your gun to all the places you do go.
Well, criminals, they decide where they decide where they're going to commit the crime. That you're on their schedule. So unless you can, sit down with them and say, gee, is 4 o'clock on Friday good for you for a gunfight? And then that way at 3:45 you can go and get the gun and be, excuse me, you can be ready to go.
And get all your friends who also
and get all
have
your
guns.
friends
Yeah.
and your bigger guns and all that. But if you don't know the time and place it's going to happen, so you have to be prepared.
And that's just common sense, folks. I can't imagine somebody who watches these shows that isn't aware of that. But if you're able to get a concealed carry permit wherever you live, get one. A lot of states honor other states' permits now and so forth, and we may have another concealed weapon national law here, possibly. That remains to be seen with the current hoopla in Congress. But anyway, that's for another story another day. We're going to take another short break here, and don't go away. We'll be right back. Hi. If you keep a firearm in your home or carry one for personal protection, it is incredibly important to get some training and keep up with changes in the law. My friend Maggie Mordaunt, owner of Homeland Personal Protection, is the place to go. Maggie teaches at Bass Pro as well as the Clark County Shooting Park and major gun shows here in Clark County and in Reno. You can check out her classes at ccwmaggie.com. That's ccwmaggie.com. Training is necessary. Thank you. We are back. This is probably a gun loss story I don't really want to do, but this is happening all over the place, so this is one of them. The Roanoke Times, you always correct my pronunciation, is that okay?
It's Roanoke, actually. But
Roanoke?
no, I don't know. That Roanoke's in Virginia. This one's Vermont, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I could be right.
You could be right.
Once.
Once.
And the Associated Press reported yesterday, this show is being taped on, or being broadcast on 5/12. This is a news story from 5/11. That Vermont raised the age to buy firearms, banned high-capacity magazines, and made it easier to take guns from people who pose a threat. The first significant gun ownership restrictions in the state's history was signed into law by the Republican governor today. It's a remarkable turnaround for a largely rural state that it traditionally has refused to impose restrictions on gun ownership. We all know Vermont, the place to go. Standing on the State House steps before a noisy crowd of hundreds of gun rights activists and supporters, Governor Phil Scott signed the bill into law. Supporters shouted "thank you," while the opponents, many wearing hunter orange, shouted "traitor" and booed the governor. This is not the time to do what's easy, it's the time to do what's right, said Scott, who continued to speak despite loud chants from both sides. Scott, a gun owner who had urged the legislature to pass gun restrictions in the aftermath of what police called a narrowly averted high school shooting in Fairhaven. Authorities say they learned a teen from Poultney was planning to kill as many people as possible. He was arrested and charged February 15th, the day after a high school shooting in Parkland, Florida, left 17 people dead. Scott said the incident proved to him that Vermont isn't immune from school violence and has plagued other parts of the country. That's hard to read that press report from without blowing my top in the middle, but obviously in this case, lawsuits are being filed from everywhere. There are people in this state who are claiming that it's not strict enough, that this should have included seizing all the existing assault rifles and so forth, which weren't in the bill. Apparently the people who own them, here we go, just have to register them with the state. I haven't read all the details of the bill. There's a whole bunch of news reports that just came out on this. I literally saw this morning. The lawsuits are coming. This will be settled by the U.S. Supreme Court, which is expected to weigh in fairly quickly on this.
Well, and here's my thing that I read in this that number one, I want to say thank you to the Vermont police law enforcement authorities, because they did something that the Broward County Sheriff's Department and the FBI couldn't do, and that's find a kid who made a threat. They obviously could do this in Vermont, so my hat's off to the Vermont law enforcement officers. He stopped a crime. They stopped a crime before it happened. Why do you want to, I can understand you wanting to take the guns away from this kid or someone like this who wants to commit a crime, but why take them away from law-abiding gun owners who have done nothing except follow the law? And now, because there was a kid in Vermont who the Vermont law enforcement officers did a wonderful job and got this kid before he committed this crime, but now they want to say, well, we now have to take the guns away from law-abiding citizens. And this is where I draw the line. I spent 31 years in law enforcement. You never enforced laws on law-abiding citizens. You enforced laws on criminals who violated those laws and didn't care. This seems to me that this should have been a situation where This kid is going to be prosecuted, I'm sure, and he should have been prosecuted. But the rest of the gun owners, the law-abiding citizens of the state of Vermont, shouldn't be prosecuted for this kid's crime. As Bob said, I think there's going to be, there's obviously lawsuits filed. This is going to be a constitutional issue because there's several states and several laws very similar to this. You know, it comes into the ex post facto law. You know, if it was legal before and then you counted law to make it illegal, you know, how can you do that when it was a you know, previously legal activity?
Actually, we have, you would know this, but we have Don Green coming on next week
Yeah.
to talk about this exact issue. It just happened in Florida, and it's proposed now in California and will probably pass their legislature, where the guns that you own, magazines that you own, will become retroactively contraband.
Yeah.
And some of them are letting you keep the magazine until you die, and then you have to turn it in or destroy it or whatever. They don't allow transfers of them, so you have to register your magazines, and so they can come out and count, see how many you've got and all that sort of thing. What in the world does this have to do with school shootings? It is such a stretch. Anyway, I'm getting into next week's show. So,
Well, and it's hard. It's obviously it's a pretty emotional issue for anybody probably watching this show or anybody that's a law-abiding citizen and is a gun owner. You know, it always cracks me up that as of late, everybody that says you're a fascist and we should do this, they seem to have fallen asleep during world history, and they didn't, that period between about 1937 and 1945, they seem to like brush that aside. I see so much of this. There's several groups. I mean, these kids that came out after the shooting, they seem to be leading this. It's if you look back at 1937 and 38 and 39 in Germany, they're using the same tactics that those people did. And it's to me, it's pure fascism. I don't know how else you could say it. Antifa is the same way. You know, they're using total fascist tactics, at least in my humble opinion. That they're using classic, fascist tactics to get their point across. And to me, it's unconscionable.
it's unconscionable, and you know, this has already happened in England and Australia and so forth, and they don't have the protection of the Second Amendment. They don't have the constitutional protections we do. They are subjects of the Crown. We are citizens of the United States. It's different. They're talking about voiding the Second Amendment. It isn't currently modern, and yeah, I mean, just crap that is. Hopefully,
Bovine feces.
we'll get through all of this and be able to keep our guns. We're gun owners. We're in for a rough ride for the next, well, at least until 2018. We see how the election comes out. So we will be back next week, as I said, with California and Nevada Attorney Don Green on these subjects. A couple of stories in these subjects primarily. Stay tuned. Lots of stuff coming up. I know lots of people who are buying lots of magazines now to bury them in their backyard, and I don't know what good they do you if they're buried in your backyard. But anyway, that's...
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Anytime that you know as well as I do, anytime that you have a political press for something like this that really bends the will of a lot of people, they do more. They've sold probably more assault weapons and magazines in the past 4 or 5 years than they ever had in the probably 15 to 20 years before then.
The gun shows are swamped. We've got one coming up this weekend at the Pavilion downtown, at where the World Trade Center is, on the tents down there on the edge. We'll be down there on Saturday and Sunday if you want to talk about that. And Don Green will be there too also. So we're out of time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.